compliance is a lot cheaper than non-compliance remains true. The environment of audit, without fail, leads to an environment of investigations, and the audit shows a gap. Internal referrals to the department will happen, and then the limelight will be right on the company and needing to then government investigation. Spending money on proactive compliance in a strategic way is always going to be cheaper than having to live through a government investigation with Ryan Barry.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Future of GovCon. This is a weekly podcast to bring together experts from across the industry and look at what's happening today and how it's going to impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Fraser. I'm the owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. Leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I get to talk to influencers every day. C-suite executives, board members, growth leaders, top government officials, military flag officers. And on this podcast, what we're doing is we're bringing in these experts from AI, from space, from medical, from logistics, from engineering. And we're sitting down and talking about what's happening in their specific area of the industry and how it will impact the future. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Future of GovCon, where we bring in the bright minds from across the industry and look at what's going to happen to our beloved industry and government contract. And today we have one of the smarter guys. I'm not going to say the smartest guys. One of the smarter guys you're going to meet in this industry. We have Ryan Barry, who is the co-founder and managing partner over at Ward & Barry, one of the preeminent boutique law firms that specifically supports our industry. Ryan is probably calling in from the DC area, right, Ryan?
Sure am. Tyson's Corner.
All right. Tyson, all the way from Tyson's. You woke up this morning, you know you're going to be on a podcast. What went through your mind? How you getting prepared for this?
There's a first time for everything, Jake. I do a lot of speaking in person live, but this is a first.
Okay.
Had to get a fancy microphone like yours.
Yeah.
And here we go. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've known Ryan for years. We're both very active in ISOA, the International Stability Operations Association, where he's been on the board and the vice chair and has a long career with ISOA. He also supports the association now with legal matters. So it's been good to get to know Ryan through the years, and I've always been impressed with his approach to looking at government contracting. Today, we're going to zoom in on, there's so much we could talk about, but we're going to really zoom in on this challenge that's going on, the administration's kind of focus on the small business, the Sledgehammer that came out about a month ago. I remember watching that clip. I was in the DC airport heading back from the ISOA summit, and it's just like, wow. We want to talk about the Sledgehammer, in particular as it applies to the tribal 8A, ANC, Hawaiian native corporations, because we think that's a very, the application of this could have huge ramifications on that area of the industry. So we're going to pick your brain on that topic today as a heads up, Ryan.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, before we get into that, I want to get to know Ryan a little bit. I was doing a little bit of homework on his bio, and I figured we have very similar backgrounds. Growing up around the military. So talk about growing up. What shaped you as a person in your early career path, Ryan?
Yeah, so grew up in an Air Force family, military brat, a lot of time overseas. Spent most of the 80s in Germany and in Italy. So my dad had long tours, first in Stuttgart and then over to Italy for a short tour, and then right back to a ground launch cruise missile base that used to be near what was then Hahn Air Base.
Yeah.
So I spent time growing up in German cities and the German countryside, and my folks put me in German schools starting in third grade, not speaking a word of German. So that was
the same thing.
Culture shift.
I went to a German kindergarten. It's back before they had peanut butter over here in Europe. And I mean, I would take Ritz crackers and peanut butter, and I would trade them. I'd take a big box and I would trade them every day. I could get anything because the kids wanted peanut butter.
We'd give those as gifts, Christmas gifts. And remember taking the German kids with us to do trick-or-treating on post.
Well, yeah.
Early, that was a huge thing too, like endless candy.
Stairwells. Every family has kids. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was great.
I lived in Heidelberg. I lived in Heidelberg in the early 80s. My mom was a Dodds school teacher.
Awesome. So then, I was already in high school when my dad got stationed back at the Pentagon. So I went from living in a village of 300 in German wine country to being right in the middle of Fairfax County, Virginia, with a high school class that was 10 times the size of my village. And all of the culture shock that goes with that. Found my way to, not to the Air Force initially, but went to West Point for undergrad. Was convinced the school was the place to go. I had a grandparents who lived in Manhattan. They'd take us up to go to parades, and I was
brainwashed you.
I was all in from the earliest age.
Were you a good student in high school? Were you an athlete? Were you what was your shtick?
Yeah, I did all the things. Athletically, I was a runner. But it was shooting that was probably my ticket into the academy. I started shooting competitively in one of the high schools in Northern Virginia that happened to have a rifle team.
Wow.
You don't have much of that these days, but NCAA rifle is a collegiate sport. It's an Olympic sport, and the barriers to entry are just buying a rifle and spending a lot of time on the range. So
wow.
3 years of that in high school, and I was recruited in to shoot at Army. Did that for a couple of years until they disbanded the rifle team. That's a story for another day. Don't worry, the team is back again, but there was a period of years where NCAA rifle continued to exist, and yet the service academies did not have NCAA teams.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, didn't fund them for those years, but that was right. That was my ticket in, was a good enough student once I was there that I had choices at graduation on what I wanted to do. And, you pick your branches based on where you land in the class. And when my time came around, there was still a slot available to branch into the Air Force instead of the Army.
And so that was an option. You could pick going into the Air Force.
Yeah, we had 5 in my class who made the move to the Air Force, 2 who went into the Marine Corps. But growing up in an Air Force family, I was impressed by my dad's career and the life that he was able to have, family life. I knew I was getting married right out of school. My wife and I met when we were 16. So that played into it in a big way. And then off to the Air Force I went.
Well, the Air Force, they have better golf courses, just better facilities.
That's what they say, as later as an acquisitions guy, albeit not building golf courses, but we did run a lot of IT fiber underneath courses and around courses. And I can attest to a lot of caring in the Air Force about the facilities.
Absolutely. It's always nice to go to an Air Force base if you've been living on an Army base. What, in terms of going into the Air Force, but coming out of the Army, was there some culture shock? You were brainwashed, beat Air Force, beat Navy. Was it a bit of a culture shock coming out of the academy?
Look, the sports piece was always easy. People ask me that question. I go out to the Army Air Force game. Who do you root for? That's easy. That's Army all the time.
Okay.
It is true that West Point prepares you for a different form of immediate officership than most people will encounter in the Air Force. I think unless you branch into the security forces field where you immediately have some form of command of soldiers, the Air Force is very technical in nature. You're learning a weapon system, and that's what you do for a long time. Your true leadership opportunities of individuals don't come until later. And for me, that was an adjustment. I didn't go in blind to it. But I think, as I've counseled others over the years who have considered making that sort of an interbranch transfer, to not lose sight of that the services do train their junior officer or train their juniors for officership very differently based on what the mission is. And the Air Force is fundamentally different than the Army.
The Army, they train you to be miserable. They train you to like get up early and do things, stand in the rain, things like that, right?
Yeah. Well, we have a joke in my law firm now that I'm still the Army early guy, and my co-founder Dan, who you know, he comes in Coast Guard early, at the crack of 10 a.m.
There you go.
On a good.
There you go.
So we'll overlap for a few hours.
Yeah. And you were a kind of another similarity. You studied literature, right? Wasn't that your major at West Point?
It's true. Yeah. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Literature and Philosophy.
Nice.
Which is something that only West Point could come up with. Right.
Almost as useful as a communications major from Vanderbilt, Yeah. So look at what I'm communicating all the time. So talk about early career. You're in the Air Force, despite your Army upbringing and schooling. Did you interface with government contractors when you're in uniform?
So not in my earliest years, I was a space and missile ops guy. And that's very much a learn your weapon system, sit in the command center and, wait for the day where we might have an exchange of ground launched missiles. What does that really mean? A lot of time to sit there, a lot of time to think about what else you want to do. For me, that was a lot of study for the LSATs during that time. Did not have any preconceived notions that I'd go to law school, but checked out the different graduate tests, did well enough on it that became the long-term plan. But then I went from that missile job into the acquisitions field, did program management for IT acquisitions out of Hanscom. And that job day to day, now was a 02, 03, my counterparts were all mid-level industry folks, right? The PMs that were performing these contracts, and we were designing and installing the base-wide IT networks around the Air Force. So a lot of getting to work one-on-one with them, a lot of travel with them. Got to get back over to Europe a bunch. Did Lajes Field in the Azores, Incirlik, Guam. So really, really great opportunity at a junior officer stage to get to see how things worked out there in industry. And this was, so General Dynamics, Lucent at the time, became Avaya, TRW. Those were the primary contractors.
Did you contemplate or think about becoming one of them? Did you think that might be a career path?
So certainly the big decision was first to stay or go on active duty. So this is all still pre 9/11, but I was coming up on the end of my 5-year service commitment. I had really enjoyed the acquisitions work. So the decision was twofold. Do I stay in as an acquisitions officer versus get out and go into industry doing that sort of work? Or do I get out going into industry with the law school delay, become a lawyer? So can't say I was really marrying the two in my mind at the time. I decided I'm going to go the law route. The decision to work with government contractors came later. Really, started in law school when I was able to take some government contracting classes that made sense based on my procurement background. And then when I moved back up to the DC area, I remember sitting in one of the towers in Reston at a firm that's really well known for doing technology work, representing a lot of Silicon Valley companies and that. But I'm looking out the windows and all you see are the neon signs of defense contractors, right? I'm like, man, this is where I should be working, right? Those are my future clients right there. And also, working in the defense industry is a way to just stay 1 degree of separation from the former mission.
That's right.
So my life as a lawyer improved dramatically when I was able to make that pivot and just kind of, find my people, find my industry while practicing law.
Kind of like I say, good recruiting requires empathy, right? And I think your career track from being in the military and partnering with government contractors, getting your law degree, then going back to support the government contractors, you kind of know, you have the context. You're not just some kid that went to law school and came out and started working in the industry.
Right. Yeah. So loving it. And then, I was in larger global firms for the first, dozen years of my law practice, partner at a couple of them, just moving up within the firms. But something that had always bothered me as I did that, as a younger guy in law, the clients that I'm going to pick up were necessarily the emerging contractors, kind of at the highest peak, the middle market. And being in the big global firms, there was always this tension over, if you're a large firm and you represent Lockheed Martin, but you also represent a bunch of Lockheed's subcontractors, eventually push comes to shove and the firm has to decide who it's going to support when there is a conflict between them. So when you combine working with smaller contractors and being one of the younger guys, the more junior guys in the firm with clients, there was always this tension and mismatch over me not feeling like I was able to give my best to the clients. And that was the primary impetus then for a little over 9 years ago, co-founding the boutique that I now have. We started it off just Dan Ward and I. We only 2 lawyers in the firm. Well, we've got about 20 lawyers now. I like to tell my wife, it's good I was right about one thing in life, and that one thing being that the middle market, the emerging contractors out there, if given an alternative of a deep practice that was not in a global firm, would embrace it. And that all we needed to do was build the firm and let people know we were here and that the work would find us. So the work's growing. I love being able to pick my team. We've got a great mousetrap at this point, and just getting deeper by the year. So
That's great. Why did you hook up with Dan? What was the connection there?
I'm randomly drinking out of my Patriot Group mug today. Jake, those guys from ISOA. Yeah. Dan and I met at an ISOA Christmas party that Greg Craddock from Patriot was good friends with Dan, brought him as his plus one, and he and I ended up co-counseling a case during my last year in big law, where our firms teamed up to support Patriot on some things. And so Craddock will tell you till the end of time that he played matchmaker, and he's right.
So your marriage to Dan started an ISOA event.
Sure did. Christmas party at my office. So another great ISOA story.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's cool. So you guys you picked a niche. Talk a little bit more about the type of work that Ward & Berry does.
So we're just in terms of the strategy and building out the firm, what we did was we looked at what are the types of law practices that federal contractors would need that are not overly commoditized. What are the things that had otherwise consolidated into the larger government contracts groups of, the global 50 law firms? And something I like to highlight is that there's some of the rating services for lawyers that are out there will tell you, who are the best lawyers in the DC area for fill in the blank. You've got endless lists of lawyers for different practice areas. When you get to government contracts, there's just a nationwide list, and the list is pretty dang short. And almost every firm on that list is a massive global firm with the rate structures that come with that inevitably. Like really smart lawyers, really bad mismatch many of the time for so many of the participants in our industry. And that, so we looked at how could we replicate those functions in a boutique environment, and with that have for our clients the benefit of not just lower fees, but better accessibility to the partners in the firm, and really just building out a true specialist model free of everything else that comes with a really large firm. So we started with the litigation piece, both amongst contracting companies and with the government in the bid protest and claims area. investigations, IG investigations, suspension debarment, which is where I personally spent most of my time practicing. And then just the compliance and counseling aspects of, who do you go to when you need counseling on FARs and DFARS clauses? How do I approach the government with this? We're deep in the classified contracting space. A bunch of lawyers still hold active clearances through our clients or through their JAG jobs as JAG reservists. And then in more recent years, two additional areas. One is what we're going to talk about today: the whole world of set aside contracting, and what are the types of companies and what are the instances where the government can make awards without a full and open competition. And the second is very much a technology focus, that we just found ourselves with an abundance of tech savvy, tech forward lawyers within the firm, right at the time where our government was pushing for more rapid innovation with smaller contractors and those in the dual use technology space. So getting deep in there with some of the dual use VCs out there representing their portfolio companies has been an area of growth. And man, I can't believe I skipped over the initial specialization, which was the overseas contingency contracting work.
Right. Yeah. That's your
back again. Like me as the young lawyer in DC trying to carve out a niche. What will get you the work? Being willing to go if something happens. So contractors in trouble in places that were difficult to conduct investigations. That was an early investigations niche of mine. So long before Zoom was cool, a lot of witness interviews, a lot of trying to figure out, do we get this guy out of country? Do we get him to Dubai to do the interview? And then how do you take information from overseas, make it admissible in U.S. courts? How do you get things that should stay overseas out of the U.S. courts? A lot of that sort of work during the global war on terror. There was a lot of it to be done.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's a good niche to be in, and it's one that you just learn it by doing, right? That overseas contingency work. So,
sir.
So, I think you guys you got a great brand. And very personable, and I've met a lot of your team members, and you can feel the culture that you and Dan have built into the team. It's unlike any other law firm that folks are going to see in the DC area. So for our audience, if you haven't hooked up with the Ward Berry team, it's a really special group. He does a really cool speakeasy every month. Has a guest come in, some good bourbon, a real high quality networking event. So if you can get on that guest list, I highly recommend that too.
That's where I snagged Jake.
Yeah, that's right.
I had you in speakeasy. We talked Nashville. We talked Nashville and speakeasies, and the rest was history.
So let's talk about this area. It's a hot topic right now. There's been a lot of pressure with this administration with scrutiny and focus on the 8A program. And within that 8A program, that's a big program, but within that, there's also this kind of, I'll say tribal 8A, ANC, that space. I know that you've been spending a lot of time on this, and I think you were just at the 8A conference in Nashville, and I think you had uptick in work around this. First of all, set the table. What do you think is going on? What do you think the administration is trying to accomplish with the executive orders and the focus on this area?
Some of that is hard to parse, not because the administration is vague about what they're trying to do, but because there's not a single voice. And then there are differences between what some in the administration might be pushing for and what certain members of Congress are pushing for. And like much in the Trump administration, there are announcements made where you have to eventually figure out, was this made for the purpose of having an announcement alone? Was it a political announcement? Was everything that was said going to come to pass, or is it going to be something in between? So I think with the current state of play, it may be helpful to back up and just quickly run through like the sequence of what has been said and when. So I think if we're talking about the 8A program at all, with the Trump administration, you have to recognize that certain members at certain times have made statements. It was Secretary Hegseth most recently, that the 8A program is one of the oldest DEI programs, right? One of the largest, one of the biggest. A lot could be said about this program and whether it is DEI in the way that DEI is otherwise being framed by the administration. But because some are saying it's a DEI program, I think you got to back up to the very beginning. Day one executive orders, president issues executive orders about eliminating DEI in government contracting dollars. And as we were sitting back in January, February, there was certainly immediate questions being raised. Does this mean the 8A program? Are they going to come after the 8A program? And then, but then there was a lag of, all the way up till June, when near the end of June, Administrator Loeffler for the SBA announced this SBA program-wide audit going back 15 years of contract awards, the 8A program, looking at things both on the government's contracting side and then performance by the contractors. So you had that announcement. Announcement itself was an earthquake, and then things went silent again. And so once again, we were wondering, is this audit really going to happen? Amongst clients and friends, even, in the large entity-owned 8A world, they had a lot of feelers out, and there was still no answer as to whether this was moving forward. Treasury, during the government shutdown, announced its own parallel audit. I mentioned the government shutdown there. So was the government shutdown a reason why there was a delayed fuse? Maybe. But the messaging, kind of died down. And I know, for my part in getting out and talking with companies and talking to trade groups, people were asking if this was going to be a real thing. How would they prepare for it? How should they be preparing? So we talked general compliance. What are the things that you should do to be audit ready? But then the data call came, which, in December, which, for those not familiar with it, it was an incredibly short fuse demand by the SBA that participants in the 8A program produce a laundry list of their organizational documents, their financials, everything down to their financial ledgers, subcontracting arrangements, the whole gamut. And everything was going to be due within, I think it was about a 3-week deadline when they first announced it. And we couldn't get visibility into whether any extensions would be granted, what the basis for what basis for an extension would be accepted. Nothing. So companies scrambled through the holidays and over New Year's, and many, perhaps most, made some sort of a submission. And within 2 days of the big data call collection, SBA suspended over 1,000 companies from participation in the program, all ostensibly for having repeatedly failed to provide this information to the government. Now, I take issue with the way the SBA went about it here, and just fundamental fairness around the form letters that came out said that it was a repeated failure. Well, how can anything be a repeated failure when you asked for it 1 month ago? The request came in an email, but suffice to say that the 1,000+ suspensions, many of the firms that were suspended were not even in the 8A program. Had graduated the program, had withdrawn from the program. There were companies that did not have any 8A contract awards, and so no doubt felt like they had nothing to submit. There was mixed messaging out of the agency as to whether they needed to submit if they didn't have any awards. So in the weeks that have followed that, hundreds of those companies have now been reinstated.
Okay.
Not, I'm certain none of that was automatic, and that most, involved lawyers like the ones from our firm that are then going to bat for the companies that call and say, man, I was just suspended from the 8A program out of the blue. What do I do? I have a, crazy story. I was at another holiday party with a company that had a mentee that's an 8A company. It was the day of the data call. And I remember, so asking my client there, hey, do you work with any 8As? And have you heard anything about today? So he connects me to the protege there. And we're talking, and I said, well, did you get anything from the SBA? Nope, didn't get anything. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure everyone in the program got something today, so you should really check. She goes digging, and it turns out within their company, they had received it, and they all decided this must be some bogus phishing thing because they're asking for so much of our financial information. Nobody would do that. And nobody from government is just going to write to us from a, no reply email box and expect us to provide everything within 3 weeks. So I have to, that's my singular data point, but I have to think there are others out there who reacted the same way, that just thought this can't be real. And, these aren't our, the entity owned 8As are a lot more sophisticated in that space. But, the 8A program has an awful lot of individual owned 8As that are truly brand new to government contracting and misunderstood what was going on. Yeah. So a lot of the work now is helping these companies that there may be absolutely nothing wrong with the company other than that they did not respond on the timeline that the SBA wanted. So then in the midst of that data call process then is when you mentioned DOD's Secretary Hex's Sledgehammer memo, as he called it, right? Yeah. Which was that followed a separate executive order that came out, I think, a week before that, talking about aligning Department of War contracts with warfighter performance and the need to look at the contracts that were being awarded and that had been awarded, period, and determining whether they actually, contributed meaningfully to increasing lethality, speed, et cetera. So then the secretary comes out with the YouTube video and the memo saying that DoD is going to conduct its audit of all awards over $20 million in nature, which, of course, anything that size, we're almost necessarily talking about the entity-owned entities. And that, these are all going to be scrutinized in a, quote, line-by-line audit. So a lot of concern by the companies then about what that will then spit out. Are we either due to SBA style, a failure to provide everything quickly enough, or would some sort of a performance deficiency be a basis to yank the contract, or that executive order requirement of alignment with the mission? Right. There's a lot of raised eyebrows on that one because, at least the way I think about things, isn't it? It's the government that decides whether their mission requires them to buy a good or service. I mean, a good contractor will walk the halls and try to advocate for themselves, but ultimately it was the government's decision to buy. But I know I've been encouraging companies to not rely on the contracting officer alone to justify the existence of their current award. That I think the smart play is just like on the front end, you do a capability statement, some sort of an unsolicited proposal. How about an unsolicited, here's the great work we're doing for you, packaged nicely so that contracting officer or program lead can serve that up as a response to the question of whether this is mission aligned or not.
Right. So talk about the I've been in conversations. We work a lot in that tribal 8A ANC space. This sledgehammer, I mean, it does impact a lot of the larger tribal firms. The $20 million, that's a pretty high direct award threshold, I think. In fact, for DoD, it's up to 100 million, but for this other agencies, it's 25 million or something lower, right? What? How do you see this impacting, or how are these tribal 8As and ANCs reacting to this?
So I think the primary takeaway for them is that this new world order is that the companies will be under almost perpetual audit. This is not something that'll be a flash in the pan, one-time submission. I think the entity-owned 8As are recognizing that they need to be able to defend their structure, their awards, how they perform the work, anytime and on short notice. So the good news for those businesses is that they're already better positioned to do that than any of the true individual 8As. Most of those entities operate on a shared services model where legal and compliance and contracts management is being done by one entity on behalf of their subsidiary 8As. So there is a lot more professionalism, system structures in place. Now, that's not to say that it rivals the compliance departments of your truly large integrators out there, but they're not starting from square one. And there are when it comes to the compliance requirements in the FAR, and that there are plenty of items that are not required in terms of internal control systems for businesses that are considered small, that I think now, if not earlier, by now, the companies are recognizing, just because the FAR doesn't require us to have these structures in place, it looks like going forward, we're going to need them.
Yeah.
So from where I sit, we've seen a dramatic uptick in proactive compliance, getting the things, there are industry standards out there for how you would approach compliance and ethics as a business. And small businesses have largely sat that out, other than having a code of conduct and maybe a hotline, posting posters, talking a good game about let's not engage in any illegal activities, and then moving on to mission performance. But compliance now is not that sort of not seen as administrative overhead, but more as a strategic necessity. That's what an audit and investigations environment like we're now in, that's what it causes. So I think for the larger 8As out there, or the super 8As, they will double down on compliance and being ready, and that is a further differentiator from the truly smalls that are out there on their own. There's only so much those smalls can do. So, as I look forward, I'm not pessimistic about how the entity-owned 8As as a group are going to do. I think there's going to be some sorting while they determine whether it's worth all the additional work to be deeply invested in the government space. Because as you know, Jake, these businesses are highly diversified outside of federal contracting. It could be commercial construction, hospitality sector, gaming. There's plenty of other areas that they can be in, not just working for Uncle Sam. So those who are not already all in might consider, is there another way to make the money and not be a player? But for those who are in and, have the past performance, know how to operate a whole family of smalls, making them work together, this audit environment, it drives up cost in audit response, but ultimately I think is a positive differentiator for them.
So do you think that the shape of this area of the industry, the tribal 8A and C space, do you think it's going to change because you have the haves and the have-nots?
I do. I certainly think that the cost to perform at the level that's now expected may well price out some of these other businesses. Interestingly, when we talk about why do these entity-owned 8As exist in the first place, they're different missions, but if you just boil it all down, they're there to provide economic development and for their communities, either directly through jobs or through investment and other community initiatives. So long as these larger entities are flowing through, let's say one of these entity-owned 8As has 10 businesses. Those 10 businesses under one umbrella providing all the same amount of economic benefit to the ultimate stakeholders as 10 standalones would. I do think it is likely better for the system that you have a relatively large that knows what they're doing and can reliably pass all those benefits through than to create 100 new companies where many of them will struggle, many will fold, many won't end up passing through the benefits that they had hoped to. So I'm in the camp of we will, the system will be better if there is a compliance bar to entry, that if you can't get above a certain level, you don't get to play. Again, back to our shared experience in ISOA and its earlier days of looking at, particularly in the private security space, should everyone be able to play? Or do we have certain expectations and we're happy to contract with a more limited group of contractors that can meet the bar? I think you're going to see some of those things considered when it comes to what are we really trying to get out of the 8A program. There are tremendous benefits for these communities in lifting groups out of poverty that would otherwise be sacrificed, and I don't see a clear path to it without the program. Thankfully, when we talk about mixed messaging, the messaging is there are some outliers out there where I'd say members of Congress who would want the program to go away altogether, but I don't see that carrying the day, not at all. And some of the meetings going on this week, there was a congressional hearing yesterday that dealt with the great benefits that come out of this program. Now, we're talking about places that are so utterly remote, do not otherwise have any path beyond basic sustenance living. 8A program exists for what was a very nonpartisan good reason.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of noise around it right now, but that's not to say that we can't change up the makeup of the companies that are in the program or have different expectations.
So we have some sort of compliance Darwinism that's going to weed out the haves and the have-nots. Do we see a chilling effect on direct awards?
I think so, because it's not the only way that you can have that you can conduct set-aside contracting, right? You can just like with many of the large awards out there, you have a true large open pool, and then you have a pool that you can have multiple awardees that are reserved for the smalls. I think we could see more of that contracting happen. It's just it's a convenient political lever, and it's also I think a natural progression when you got to remember these audits are also hitting the contracting officers and the program leads. And so they're going to engage increasingly in what I think of as defensive contracting. They will go fast only if they feel like they have to, because they know that their career's on the line at this point. So why pull the direct award, no bid, pull in a company where others might be able to do it, unless there is a true speed imperative? And so I think you're going to see two systems informally emerge, where you have the must go fast, national security informed contracting, where these direct awards will be still a tremendously convenient a lever to pull, and they'll pull it when they feel like they need to. But everyone else is going to have to pay the compliance tax and wait in line. And, we've seen tremendous slowdown in the number of new 8As that have been approved, the number of contract awards. But it really feels like the whole contracting mechanism has gummed up if you're not in that national security lane. But it's just, the two lanes are real. I mean, I know I came across a company just recently that saw what had been one of their full and open awards transition for the follow-on into an 8A protected program.
Mm-hmm.
So that in the middle of this environment, the government still made one of those choices. To this company's chagrin, but it's happening.
You think they're going to start opening up some of the direct awards and before they exercise option years or whatever, and opening up direct awards and competing them?
I think that, again, it's more politically palatable to first have a direct award, but even on the government side saying this was a one-time thing. And when this comes around again, by now the market will have adapted. We'll know exactly what it is we're contracting out, and let's see who else in the market can provide, the speed, flexibility, cost, all of those things without just going right back to the well of the original contractor. So, but yeah, I do think that's a natural evolution. People don't like the programs that are forever, what feels like forever set aside. There's never competition. It goes from one company in a direct award to another company with the same direct award the next time around.
Yeah. And what about, do you think they would maybe open up some of these direct awards or things that might otherwise be awarded sole source and compete them only within like the ANCs? Are they able to do that? So they're guaranteed to get kind of set aside, not full and open, but just competing it within a subset. Do you see that happening?
I think the safer, more likely play is that you'll see it open to everyone who fits any one of these categories, at least on paper. Yes, you may submit a bid. We're interested in hearing from you. But, akin to that defensive contracting I was talking about, if you're then on the government side and you do have the flexibility even to make a direct award, and certainly, all the flexibility in the world to shape the requirements on the way in, to effectively limit it to a smaller group, I think you're going to see an overwhelming preference for the companies that are structurally boring, that in many ways look like what you would expect from one of the larges out in a full and open, that yes, anything you want, they can produce for you the next day. Any follow-up questions you got, they've got them answered. So that on the contracting officer side, you feel like, yeah, I know I'm in set-aside land. I'm contracting with at least relative smalls, but these guys have their stuff together. Yeah, like they're not feeling the risk. And I think, I feel like can't overstate how much the contracting officers are under pressure here. Their staffing is greatly reduced as well.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't want to let contracts that are going to come back and haunt them. And so I think they'll be trying to straddle that line of not overtly limiting the competition to only the entity owned 8As, but I'm betting that they're going to look for things that those companies are the ones who are likely to present a compelling proposal.
Yeah. There's so much happening, so much changing. It's historic. Let's walk ahead. Let's go 3 years in the future. It's 2029, early in the year. We've just had an election, hopefully. So there could be a change of administration, change of party. And that's 3 years from now. So there's some time for these recent edicts to have an impact on this community within government contracting. What do you think? What do you think this 8A tribal ANC space looks like 3 years from now?
I have to think that in terms of the total number of participants, radically lower numbers in who's really in the game, that we'll see it being increasingly difficult for new entrants to come in and meet the heightened expectations. So that if you're, even look at the SDBOSB world, for instance. If you're out there and you're a service disabled veteran thinking of starting a business, and you're in talking to me about it, and I'm telling you all of the things that it's going to take. Like, if you want to take the King's coin, here's all the things that you're going to have to do right from the jump, and that the on-ramp is crazy short, and that the government these days is not going to give you years to get things right. A lot of people won't submit in the first place. And then you'll have a lot of losers, economic losers coming in that if they can get their applications approved, they're just not going to get the traction quickly. And then the remaining sorting point, as we talked about, are amongst the Super 8As, who really wants to continue to commit to trying to generate additional 8A companies to make them go, if you've already reached that economic position where you have other commercial choices to go engage in other types of contracting. That's a rational choice that many of them will choose. So I think we're going to have a smaller universe of the where the ANCs, tribals, NHOs will predominate.
Barriers to entry are higher. The cost of staying in the game, staying compliant is higher. I definitely think we'll see consolidation. And frankly, these big tribes that have been getting a lot of direct awards, I've talked to a bunch, they're like, I'm 60-40, 70-30. They get to build their team so they can go compete. Get ready to compete. I think Mike Dario said that on his podcast a couple months ago. They need to get ready to compete at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So what do you see? We always like to close out with one word that describes Ryan Berry's kind of gut feeling about the future of government contracting in this 8A kind of tribal ANC space. Like, what word do you use to describe that?
I'm going to break the rules and give you two words.
It's been done.
Strategic compliance is the thing, that companies need to not look exclusively at what the FAR clause says will be required for compliance, and instead need to be thinking about what will give this government customer comfort that in contracting with my company, especially in a directed award context, that I'm not going to become their nightmare 6 months, a year down the road, or that career dissipation light going off in the contracting officer's office. Like, what will convince them that they're not risking by contracting with me? That's what they should be doing.
Yeah. That's good advice for our customers out there. Get good at it. Basically get good at doing your contracting officer's job to be able to give you a green light and a stamp of approval.
Yeah. Well, and look, the another one of my sound bites has been that compliance is a lot cheaper than non-compliance. That remains true. So, the environment of audit without fail leads to an environment of investigations. When the audit shows a gap, internal referrals to the department will happen, and then the limelight will be right on the company and needing to then weather a government investigation. So if you're just counting dollars and cents, spending money on proactive compliance in a strategic way is always going to be cheaper than having to live through a government investigation with Ryan Berry. Nobody wants that.
Who wants that? Right. Ryan, thanks so much. Thanks for sharing your insight. Thanks for spending time with us today. This is a hot topic. Hopefully our audience got a lot. If you have any questions, folks, reach out to Ryan directly and his team. They can give you guidance in this very important time. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think that's what he's saying. So check out what some prevention looks like. Ryan, thanks for coming out. We'll see you out on the circuit, out in the industry. Look forward to seeing you hopefully in Wiesbaden at the ISOA Europe.
That's right.
Awesome.
Love it. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, to our guests out there, to our audience, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Future of GovCon. And we got a great guest coming up next week, so make sure you're tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you around. All right, so thanks for joining me on another episode of the Future of GovCon. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and some of the bold predictions. If you did, take a second, share it on your social media, subscribe on YouTube. If you have any ideas for future guests or topics you'd like to have covered, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there. You can always learn more about precision talent solutions at pts.careers. Look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.